Good evening and welcome. I'm Sheila Balgobin and I am the Dream Decipherer, and I help you to crack the code of your sleep and dreams so you can sleep sound and dream deep. This evening have two dreams, two short dreams, and well, let's just get into them and see what's going on. In the first dream, the dreamer reports that the dreamer was explaining to their wife that their son was a green belt in judo, but had been upgraded to a blue belt so that um, the child would be able to enter competitions at that level in the coming months in the summer. And that's the end of that dream. The second dream, the dreamer reports that the dreamer was using their phone to look at the internet, but for some reason, um, pop-ups with porn on them kept coming up on his phone, and he had to keep getting rid of them because his wife was sitting next to me. Well, I'm reading what he's saying. He's not sitting next to me; he's sitting next to him, and didn't want his wife to see that this stuff was coming up on his phone and thinking that he was looking at it. And the dream ends there. So those are two little dreams, but as always, little dreams can contain lots of information. And when dreams are dreamt in close proximity to one another, say in the same night or in the same week, perhaps, they're usually connected in some way. So we'll be taking a look at that and see just what the connection between these two dreams are. So in the first dream, if we look at that and start to pick it apart, there seems to be that the dreamer's son is getting this upgrade, almost a precocious upgrade, ahead of time, in order to participate in some future competitions. Um, a couple of questions came up for me with that, and first of all, does the dreamer think that the son actually warranted this upgrade? I mean, in other words, did he earn it? Could he claim it legitimately? Is another question that came up: is the child being pushed too soon? Maybe pushing them beyond where they're ready to go. But you could flip that on its head and ask: is this perhaps a challenge to push the child to excellence, to excel? And there's something else that came to mind for me, and that the word was ascension, or moving higher, moving to a higher place. Now, if you look at the dreamer's son as the dreamer's shadow, the shadow part of us, the unknown, unrecognized, or underdeveloped part of ourselves, usually appears as a person of the same sex. Not necessarily the same age, but the same sex, but represents some aspect of the dreamer that, like I said, is unknown or underdeveloped in some way. And if we look at the sun as that shadow part of the dreamer, my question here was: what part of the dreamer feels perhaps that there's some kind of ascension or elevation process going on for them? And is there a feeling in somewhere in the dreamer's life where they feel that something is maybe unmerited or undeserved in some way? In other words, feeling unworthy, perhaps in some way. There's seems to be an indication of a movement from one level to the next, maybe one level in judo in this case, but in a wider sense, that there's a shift or movement that's going on to a higher place. And my final question here was: where perhaps in the dreamer's life do they feel that they might be undeserving or unworthy in some way? So we'll leave that for the moment and move on to the second dream, and with the dodgy pop-ups. So you've got these dodgy porn pop-ups appearing on the dreamer's mobile phone while they're trying to look up something or do something online. And my first question here was, what were they doing? And it occurred to me that all these search engines that send pop-ups to your phone usually will send them based on things that you have looked up before. So it's kind of strange that if the dreamer wasn't actually looking at this this porn stuff, how did it end up on their phone? Did somebody stick it on their phone? Or kind of sabotage their phone so that this stuff would keep popping up? It's just a bit curious. But my question here was, what was the dreamer, perhaps, what was the dreamer looking at, or may have inadvertently opened before these pop-ups started to appear? And another question occurred to me about this. Well, why the guilty behavior with regard to the dreamer's wife? If the dreamer was truly innocent in the matter, why not just say something to the wife, like, hey, what the hell is this on my phone? This stuff keeps popping up. So there's an implication here that whereas if the dreamer may not have been doing anything, there's some guilt about something going on, because why do they feel the need to hide this stuff if they're not actually looking at it or engaging with it in any way? And that kind of provoked the question, is there some kind of shame or guilt or something that's not being vocalized in some way? And when I wrote this, I said, the question I asked was, why is the guilty behavior when you appear to have done nothing wrong? And the word appear kind of jumped out at me. So it's about the perception of others, not necessarily what you were actually doing, but what people think you were doing. And there's something around a lack of honesty or clarity or truthfulness. And my question here was, where in the dreamer's life is there some kind of lack of transparency or concern with regard to the perception of other people? And perhaps that's a challenge to be more clear and more transparent in what they're saying or showing, or how they're showing up to others or expressing themselves to others. And also there's something about seems to be maybe a fear of being misjudged or misunderstood in some way. So that's so far what I've pulled out of this dream. I mean, I love being able to go back to dreams after a period of time, and they've had a chance to soak in a little bit and get a new perspective, because as time moves on, you gain new experiences, your knowledge hopefully has expanded in some way, and you can look at something with a fresh pair of eyes and gain new insights. But to look at what connects these two dreams together, there's a couple of things that seem to me that to link these two dreams. And one is competition is the first thing. I mean, a more obvious competition in that the son was supposed to preparing to compete in judo competitions at a higher grade, and a possible competition with regard to this phone and the wife. So there's something there that, the possible competition, that's something that's taking the dreamer's attention away from their wife, or could take her attention away from him. So there's also something about disclosure and being open and transparent, or providing information. In the first dream, the dreamer is informing or disclosing information to his wife. And we'll come back to the wife in a minute. The other thing is that in the second dream, there is non-disclosure. The dreamer is thinking about something, the dreamer is taking action, but is doing it in a way that doesn't disclose anything. They're just kind of getting rid of the evidence, so to speak, getting rid of the dead bodies or live bodies in this case, I suppose. But there's one event that's being open, there's open and honest conversation about, and the other there's no conversation at all, or it's an internal one or a hidden conversation. There's something about worthiness, perhaps, or being, or deservedness, if you will, in both dreams. In the first dream, it's a bit more obvious, is that this upgrade from one belt level to the other in judo. The other, there, and that's it, going to a higher level, whereas the porn pop-ups are actually is a kind of a descent in level, going down to the lowest common denominator, you might say. So there's something there, this juxtaposition of seeking higher as opposed to looking low, you might say. Then there is the wife. No name, but I mean, normally people don't actually have to name their partners in their dreams, but we always have to remember that the people in our dreams who aren't necessarily themselves. In other words, they represent some aspect of the dreamer, him or herself, rather than the actual person. Occasionally, they can be acting as themselves and being themselves and playing that role in a dream, but generally they're highlighting some particular aspect of the dreamer. And if looking at the dreamer's wife in that context, the wife could possibly represent the anima. And the anima is the inner female in every male, just as we have, all females have an animus, which is the inner male. We need both for balance. Now, if the one of the connections between these two dreams is the wife appears in both dreams. One and is passive actually in both dreams. You don't see the wife actually interacting as such as in an active way, but she's present, which makes me tend to think that the wife here may actually represent the anima, the inner female inside the dreamer. And that being the case, she represents relationship, connectedness, feeling, emotion, traditionally female traits, but men can be just as nurturing and caring as well. But there's something here perhaps about connection or disconnection, and perhaps in one case, that the dreamer perhaps may need to look at. There's something about honoring that those connections on it, perhaps at the heart level, and examining relationships that may or may not be open and transparent, and maybe need to be opened up and to become more transparent. It's lots of things, lots of strands to these two dreams that could be looked at. And as always, I'll be looking forward to hearing what the dreamer has to say about the clues that they've been given. And I did say that one of the things that I will do occasionally is to go back in my archives and actually share some of the feedback that the dreamers have given after they've heard their interpretations. It's always an enlightening experience for me, as well as for the people who have dreamt and presented their dreams to me. But that's something that'll be coming. I have to look through and find interesting dreams that aren't too complicated to follow. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Have a great evening and rest of the week, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.